Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, coming to you from the studios of WNIN in Evansville, Indiana this week, along with our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, there is so much going on this week, it is almost dizzying.
Jeremy, what a year this week has been, man.
Totally.
I cannot keep track. My head's on a swivel.
Absolutely. But of course, one of the biggest things that people are paying attention to this week is the president's plan now underway to deport everyone who is in the country illegally. That's more than 11 million people. It has already begun. We should note that nearly 80% of the undocumented immigrants in this country have been here for 15 years or more. So trying to deport them will have big implications for families, some of which include U.S. citizens. Obviously, for the economy, there are logistical challenges. And of course, there is the image of the United States as a land of immigrants. So we want to hear from you this hour. Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. And we will get to your calls in a moment. But first, last week, we asked you if democracy is really in danger as Trump returns to power. A lot of interesting and diverse opinions came in. Here are some of the calls we got after the show.
This is Cynthia from Cleveland, Ohio. I do believe that our democracy is threatened, and part of that comes from the fact that the people that he is selecting for the cabinet are not the kinds of people to hold him back from doing more of the extreme things.
My name is Kevin from Denver. I'm an African American. I'm retired, but I rose out of poverty. And when you talk about whether democracy will end with Trump, I think that there are some implications here that we have democracy now, and I believe that it's been chipping away for quite some time.
Hi, this is Jocelyn. I'm from the Houston, Texas area. Is Donald Trump's election a threat to democracy? Probably not. I believe that if he had intended to disrupt democracy, he could have in 2020.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in, and you can hear that entire episode on our podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. So now to our topic this hour, Trump's deportation program. What does it mean for the country, the economy, for you? Are you against it? Are you for it? We want to hear your thoughts. Tolliver, what is the number again, please?
It's 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. You can also comment on our live stream on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch. I just posted on TikTok last second. I'm sorry, I was better late than never, but join us on the live stream.
Now they know on TikTok. All right, let's meet our panel. Indiana's new Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, a Republican, is with us. Lieutenant Governor, welcome to The Middle.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be with you all.
And also joining us is Indiana State Representative Alex Burton, a Democrat who represents Evansville, where we are currently broadcasting. Also new to that office, Representative Burton, great to have you on the show as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice to have two, we call them freshmen, because you guys have not yet, picked up all the talking points. You actually are able to speak your mind maybe a little bit more. But let me just start before we get to the phones. I want to ask each of you about this as we broadcast from Evansville. Representative Burton, I'll start with you. How do you feel about the deportations that are underway right now, and what concerns do you have?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And the concerns that I have is simply it's uprooting families from the place that they've wanted to make home. Families here in Evansville specifically have chosen our community for a myriad of reasons, and they're here. We are the bedrock of Southwest Indiana when it comes to manufacturing, and I'm here and hopeful that the immigrant population across Indiana, specifically in Southwest Indiana, can find a home here in Evansville.
Even if they're coming in illegally?
Even if they come here illegally, there's a pathway, but I think there's too much of a focus on illegal immigration here in Indiana. We're not near the border. There are legal persons here in the state who have made their home here, and that's where the focus should be on, and making sure that those who are here are taken care of.
Lieutenant Governor, I imagine you disagree. You've been supportive of President Trump's proposal. How do you feel about it, and do you have any concerns about how the deportations will be and are being carried out?
Well, I think we're either a nation of laws or we're not. And if people come here illegally, they broke our laws. And so if people don't like that, then we can change the law. But at some point, we got to say, we either uphold our laws or we don't. And quite frankly, the world knows that we're not enforcing our laws. And so we're seeing extremely dangerous situations occur with the fentanyl coming across the border, both the north and the southern border. I think every state is a border state now because we're seeing a fentanyl deaths increase in Indiana. And I think what President Trump is doing is first and foremost getting the criminals and the cartels and the gangs out of here. I don't think the intention is to, deport people who are, have established lives here. I think the intention is first and foremost to get the people that are dangerous to society, and then let's talk after that. But really, we're either going to uphold our laws or we're not. I think that's the question at hand.
So just to be clear, what you're saying is then that you would be okay with somebody who has not broken laws other than coming across the border illegally and been here for 10 or 15 years in the United States, with them staying here?
Let's first get the million or so gangs and criminals out. There's reports of upwards of 13 million illegal people here right now. And so I think we do first steps. First steps, get the criminals, those that are violent, those that have committed egregious just crimes against our nation. Let's get them out, and then we'll have a conversation on what to do next. But I think we got to do first things first. And I like what President Trump's doing. I like what Tom Homan's doing, and I know in Indiana we're going to support that.
So I saw an estimate of Representative Burton that about 2% or more than 2% of Indiana's labor force are undocumented. That would be, I think, more than 60,000 people. For the record, as you said, more than 40% of the immigrants who are in the U.S. illegally are in two states, California and Texas. But what kind of an economic effect do you think that people in Indiana, states like Indiana, would feel if all of those people either were deported by force or decided to self-deport out of fear that they were going to be deported?
Sure. I think the thing to highlight the most of what you just said and shared is that the number is so small of those who are undocumented here. And we can't focus on that small of a number as it relates to the immigrants in our community. For me, and being involved in industry, specifically in manufacturing for years and years, we see that our employees across Southwest Indiana specifically are overworked. For the immigrant population who exist here in Indiana, for them to be frightened, scared by all these policy changes, what's to stop them from going across the river to Kentucky to feel safe, to feel protected, and to make a way of life? If that happens, our employees, those families are going to be directly impacted the most.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, leaving aside your views about the actual deportation, what kind of economic effect do you think it will have? Just there are so many cooks, construction people that are undocumented in this country, all across this country.
I think you got to be asking the question of what strain on our system are the illegal immigrants having right now. If you look at Seymour, Indiana, they don't have the bandwidth to educate, to care for, to maintain the type of influx that they've seen even in the last 2 years. And that's been documented. There's been multiple reports on what's been going on in Seymour. I've talked to people in Seymour when I was campaigning. I've talked to legislators from Seymour. And so my question is, we're spending a lot of public dollars and resources on that would otherwise go to citizens, and we now have to take care of these illegal immigrants that have come across. And listen, I'm a compassionate guy. I want to help people, but we can't help them if we don't know they're here. And so what I say is, hey, come into our nation. Like we want to be an open arms nation, but you got to do it legally. And then we can keep up. We can make sure that the people are being cared for. But if you're here illegally, I mean, how can we help somebody? And I think it's really been a big strain on our resources. So I actually think it will help us economically in the long run.
Let's get to a call, squeeze one in before we take a quick break. Bill is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Bill, welcome to The Middle. Your thoughts on the deportation program?
Well, thank you. I'm a retired economist, and I'm not an expert on the unemployment statistics, but economists in general say 4.1%, which is the most recent figure that I remember, is essentially full employment because people are always changing jobs, so there's always going to be some people temporarily unemployed. If you deport 11 million people, let's say 5 million of them have jobs, well, 4 million, it's millions anyway. It's going to be one dramatic labor shortage. It'll be harder to produce things because there won't be as many people to produce them, which will put an upward pressure on prices and is going to cause a certain amount of inflation. One example recently on NPR was about meatpacking plants in Nebraska facing an acute problem if workers get deported.
Yeah. Bill, thank you very much for that. Representative Burton, just briefly, your thoughts on that. The idea of inflation, which we've been dealing with for so long, that could get worse with the deportations.
Yeah, absolutely. The lieutenant governor mentioned, Seymour, Indiana. I truly believe that if cities like Seymour are facing some issues when it relates to immigration, those coming in, and it's messing with their bandwidth, surely there's resources across the state. If we have a surplus of upwards of almost $3 billion in reserves, then surely we can find a way to take care of people who are choosing to call Indiana home. Here in Evansville, we've done it. We are literally in the process of opening the Immigrant Welcome Center.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to that, Lieutenant Governor, right after we take this break. But Tolliver, the deportations are expected to go into effect nationwide, but the Trump administration says its early efforts will be in the city of Chicago.
Yes, my home city. That's right. Here's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson talking to the press just last week.
Protecting residents in the city of Chicago is of most importance here. Those guidelines that have been specified are tethered to state and local law. There's the fear that has found its way in the city of Chicago because of the threats that are coming from the incoming administration. The people of Chicago can rest assured that the full force of government will do everything in its power to protect the residents of this city.
Tolliver, you once ran to be a Chicago alderman, so that could have been you as the mayor.
I got about negative 20% of the vote. Okay, it's deep in the negatives.
A reminder, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. And Tolliver, what are we listening to here?
We're listening to Neil Diamond with the song America. It's about his parents' journey to the United States. So Neil's very pro-immigration. He's pushing 84, so, mind your own business might be the fountain of youth. Who knows? All right, wherever your call is coming up on The Middle.
They come to America every time that flag's unfurled. They come to America.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, coming to you this week from Evansville, Indiana. If you're just tuning in, we are a national call-in show focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking you about Trump's deportation plans, what they mean for you, the economy, and the country. Tolliver, can you give us the number again to ccall in?
Yeah, it's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com. And, once again, make sure you tune into our YouTube, okay? We're really trying to promote that, blow it up. Check out our YouTube. We're streaming right now.
Thank you for the YouTube ad. I am joined by Indiana Republican Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith and Indiana Democratic State Representative Alex Burton. Before we go back to the phones, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that, Micah Beckwith, what we heard. And with the idea also just on the resources drawn by illegal immigrants that many of them contribute to things like Social Security, but they never take any out, too.
Well, I think we're seeing more of a drain when it comes to our state in Indiana from what they are taking from the state resources. And again, I heard what Representative Burton said, but I go back to my original point: are we going to be a nation of laws, or are we not? And I guess I keep coming back to that. It's like, we want to be compassionate. Absolutely. We want to care for those that need cared for. Absolutely. And in Indiana, we are a welcoming state. But how can we care for people that we don't even know are here? And so, we've got, upwards of 13 million people in the nation illegally. And that's from reports that I've heard. So yeah, we've got to do a better job of making sure that people recognize our laws are in place for a reason. And it's in place for public safety. It's in place because we want to help those who need help. And and so, again, as much as, that compassionate heart needs to be maintained, we've got to say there's a reason we ask everyone to go through the front door and not jump over the fence.
How do you, just on the issue of compassion, how do you feel about the idea of agents going into places like schools and churches for raids, which the Trump administration has said is okay now?
Well, I mean, I think let's wait to see if they're actually going to do that. My issue has been we got to start with the violent offenders, the criminals. Let's take care of that, step one, and then let's have a conversation. And I think listen, Trump's coming in and he's coming in hard because we've allowed our system to be abused for far too long. And I think he needs to. I think you need to have bold leadership. I think you need to make a statement to the rest of the world. If you're going to come to America, you got to come through the front door and don't jump the fence. And so he's doing what needs to be done. Again, do I think he's going to raid schools and churches? No, I don't think that's probably going to be the case at all. But I do think he's making the statement: you break our laws, there's going to be consequences, especially for those who break our laws and then add violent crime on top of that. So let's get rid of them. I mean, I look at Chicago. We played the clip from Brandon Johnson. I shake my head. I'm like, Mayor Johnson, your city is crumbling. I mean, you can't even. You're kicking kids out of school so you can use the schools for migrant shelters. I mean, that's what happened just a few months ago. And I'm like, at some point, I'm like, okay, people of Chicago, this is what you voted for. You don't have schools, you don't have healthcare.
Yeah.
You can't like live because there's people coming in, jumping the line, and it's just not fair. You just can't jump the line. And we're asking people to wait in line and
right.
Come be a part of our community.
Let me give the representative a chance to respond.
Yeah, jumping in line. This rhetoric is. At some point, enough is going to have to be enough. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I hope this administration comes with a substantial policy to address what's happening at the border. The current president intentionally chose not to allow the bill that Senator Lankford was bringing forward in Oklahoma to the floor of the Senate, which is incredibly problematic. And we have to get beyond this rhetoric of talking, jumping the border and jumping the fences and all these things. These are people who are trying to find a better life, no different than those who came to Evansville in the early 1800s who became industry titans and tycoons. That is the same thing that can happen in this new industrial revolution that needs to take place. Every place you go to is in need of workers. Who's coming through those doors? It's people who are looking for an opportunity, not a handout, not some free government subsidy. They're wanting to work. And for those families who are here and working every single day, who are having to work mandatory overtime because there aren't enough people, and there's a line of hundreds of people who are wanting to work, who are here legally, something has to be done. The time is now, and we have to get beyond this rhetoric. We are a country that is built on hard work and doing things the right way. This is the opportunity right now to do what is right, and having this rhetoric without anything of substance is furtherly kicking the can, continuing the can down the road. We have to do something right now. So I hope the Lieutenant Governor puts a plan in place and wants to bring some substantial policy forward that addresses immigration at the core.
Let me go to the phones, and James is in New Bern, North Carolina. James, what do you think about Trump's immigration and deportation plan?
Well, I guess I'm different from most of the other people that have been calling in because I'm a bit younger. I'm in my early 20s. And for me, it kind of feels like a breath of fresh air because all my life, every presidential, governor, senatorial election, I've always heard these, or I've always seen those, generic ads, illegal immigrants taking jobs. But in my own life, having come of my own age politically, I guess, if you can call it that, I just feel like it's a breath of fresh air if someone's finally doing something. If Trump has shown anything, it's that you really just can do something or anything. You can at least change the world somewhat. And beyond that, I think that the argument that we need illegal immigrants to just staff all these jobs, I don't know how to say this, but it's bourgeois, it's capitalistic. It feels like, so we have to bring in and import all these people just so that American corporations can keep paying lower wages so they don't actually have to hire anyone, so they don't have to actually provide any benefits, so they don't have to man up and actually start paying well. It just feels like, I don't know, at that point, America just feels like this parasite sucking up the youth and labor of the world, and that doesn't feel right at all.
James, let me just ask you one follow-up question, which is, you say that, the corporations would have to pay more, would have to pay higher wages if they were to hire American workers to do some of these jobs. Would you be willing to pay more at the grocery store or more for things that you buy if they pass those costs on to you, the consumer?
I mean, I'm already paying more at the grocery store and everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, great. James, thank you very much. And you can't buy eggs these days at the grocery store. I cannot find them. They are out. Lieutenant Governor, what do you think about what James said there?
No, I agree with him. I think it's kind of promoting crony capitalism when you say, well, we need these immigrant workers so we can just, keep these corporations, raking in the profits. And I think he's right on. I think there's what I'm saying is exactly what James is saying. Let's just give it a shot, because it seems like everything else we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years isn't working. And, I think it would be hard to sit here and say what I heard Representative Burton say to the family of, let's say, Laken Riley, right? We've got families in Indiana that have been hurt by immigrants who have done violent crimes to their family as well. And so, what do you tell those families? It's like, it's not that big of a deal. No, well, it was to them, and God forbid it happens to anybody else. But we're not doing our job protecting our first priority, which is the citizens of this nation. No parent would ever say, I'm going to sacrifice my child's well-being for my neighbor's kid. And while we're called to be good neighbors, we're not called to sacrifice our own children's well-being for that of the kids down the street. We have a primary obligation to take care of who God has given us first and foremost, and that's under our stewardship. And so as a nation, we have to primarily care for our citizens first and foremost, so that we then can be good neighbors to the rest of the world. But when our house is on fire, there's no way we're going to be able to be good neighbors. And I think that's what Trump is doing, is he's getting it back into control so we can actually compassionately care for people and be a good neighbor to the rest of the world.
Let's go to Nick, who's in my hometown of Urbana, Illinois. Nick, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hello. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about, there was a case here in Urbana that just happened. There was somebody who had gotten in a car accident and it killed 2 people right by the hospital here. And then this guy, it turns out he had already been deported once. They found him. He was trying to get to Mexico, back to where he's a citizen. So I guess my thing is like, okay, we're going to deport these people, but if they're truly violent criminals, one, aren't we going to prosecute them for what they've done here? In this case, this guy is getting extradited back to Illinois. And 2, I mean, if he's been deported already and he's come back, and what are we doing to keep them from coming back? Like, right. We're just going to raise the cost the more security we put in there. So essentially, the people with better finances can come,
Yeah.
but so, yeah, I guess I just want to understand a little better, like, how that system's going to work.
Good question, Nick. Thanks for calling. Representative Burton, putting aside the fact that I think the statistics do show that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at lower levels than just regular old American citizens, but they obviously get in the news, just like Nick has talked about, Laken Riley. When it happens, it really upsets people, and especially when somebody's been deported and they came back in, or they didn't leave, and then they commit a crime like that and somebody dies.
Yes, and it is. We have to do something. We have to address it. I'm not, by any means, I'm not saying that those who commit crimes should not be held accountable for what it is that they do. They absolutely should.
And deported?
And however the law plays out. That is my stance on that. But we also can't go around assuming that someone looks different than us is automatically a criminal. And I think the criminalization of immigration is part of the problem. And I hope that once a plan is established to those who are committing crimes here, yes, be held accountable for those crimes committed here, and those who are here illegally, identify that process and put it on. There's been a whole lot of rhetoric and not a whole lot of action and necessary steps. Now, granted, the administration is incredibly new. I know they're working through those processes. But I also am oddly aware that whether you live in Brown County, Indiana, or Vanderburgh County, our public safety officials are understaffed, overworked, and that cannot be on the burden. That cannot be an added burden to them as well.
Tolliver, some comments coming in online.
Well, I also want to point out that there's 2 Illinoisans, 2 Indianans. This is the most middlest episode we've ever had, geographically.
Hey,
okay,
hold on a
Paul,
second. We're called Hoosiers, okay? Hoosiers.
Yeah,
not
Hoosiers,
Indianans.
right. Yes.
Don't tell them I said. See, now it's a war. Look at that.
We can get
Paul in
fireworks on
Pittsburgh.
this side of the border, though, Tolliver. Remember that.
Absolutely, I do remember. Paul in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania says, here in Pittsburgh, some nearby towns have shrinking populations in recent decades, and we would benefit from an influx of immigrants. Please send some our way. Eugene and Hoffman Estate says this plan fails to address the root cause of most illegal immigration. People don't just leave their homes, cross miles of perilous terrain, and pay their life savings to smugglers just so they can live a life of luxury freeloading. And here's one I've seen a lot online, this latest one. I despise Donald Trump, but I totally support all deportation of illegals, and I think we should immediately begin the process to amend the Constitution to stop birthright citizenship.
Wow. Yeah, we know that he tried to do that by executive order, and that's been put on hold by a judge. Let's go to Shane, who's in Houston, Texas. Shane, welcome to The Middle. Your thoughts on the deportation?
Thanks for having me for one. And I work in the trades. I'm a cabinet maker here in Houston. There's a lot of competition. Very many of those are not legal citizens, which, basically I'm saying I am directly impacted by it all the time. Mm-hmm. And I know very well in new construction and remodeling, if you take away the, let's just say, illegal, non-registered, not trying to get a license, not trying to get citizenship, that's only going to push up everything else. I'm not an economist, anything else, but I would like to say this as far as the gentleman on there who was talking about, we want to welcome you through the front door. I'm very good friends with a couple who have been together for 14 years. She is from England. She's been back and forth here for the last 14 years. They got married 6 years ago. She's been trying for 12 years. I had to send pictures of them together from some event long ago, and she still doesn't have her citizenship. These are, white, well-to-do, they've got money, they're still struggling. So how can somebody who really needs it, who's trying to get out of desperate situations, be expected to just walk through the front door?
Shane,
anyway, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to let you take that. I guess there's two things there. One about just the cost of things going up, but the other is the legal process is very onerous and takes a long time.
Sure. So break the law. I guess that's the solution, right?
Or fix that part of it.
Well, and I think that's what people have to recognize. It's what that caller just was saying is it's okay to break the law in some cases. Now, if we all get to decide when it's okay to break the law, then okay, that's fine. Let's just be consistent and let everybody decide when it's okay to break the law. Or we uphold the law, right? And we just say nobody's above the law. And I think it's a very dangerous, slippery slope when you say, well, it's hard to go through the process. And I'm not saying that the process is perfect and it needs to be reformed, but how can we expect to reform a process when we're already underwater with the 13 million illegals that have come through the back door? Of course, we're not going to be able to open that front door as wide as we want it to be, because we're trying to stay above water with, caring for these 13 million that we don't even know how they got here. And can we talk about the 300,000 missing children that we still don't know? Our church that I'm a part of has a big heart for ending human trafficking. And what has happened in the last few years with these children that have been trafficked is absolutely just heartbreaking. And so, we're creating this terrible problem just because we're not willing to say, hey, follow our laws. And if you break our laws, there's consequences. But we get callers like that just kind of say, well, it's okay to break the law, but then it creates 100 other problems in its wake.
How would you respond to that, Representative Burton?
Yeah, my fear, like I said earlier, is that this is just a talking point and it's rhetoric with no substance behind it. If we're truly going to take care of Hoosiers in our case, then we need to address housing. We need to make sure that those who are in school can read by the time they're in third grade. And we also need to address our healthcare situation.
So you're saying that this is just not an important issue for you?
What's not?
Immigration.
It is. It's equally important, but as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, that he's going to focus on that the focus needs to be on taking care of America. If we're going to do that, then we surely can address the issues that I just mentioned. But if not, this is another thing that we need to add to the long list, the laundry list of things that have to be solved. And we can't just talk about immigration from the standpoint of people are here, I don't want them in my backyard, they need to follow the process. People are here. And good luck to whatever agency is going to be responsible for. Why not set up offices like TSA is in every airport? Set up offices so those who are here, get them through legally. let's get the process on. So at least have a starting point, but to just mention it and talk about the same talking points that have been echoed throughout the campaign and just randomly mention Chicago, let's do something about it.
You know, Tolliver, one of the questions about doing something about it right now involves how do you do it? What if you send somebody back to a country that won't take them? Then where do they go? How do you just logistically do it? Few figures are going to be more central to that effort than Trump's new border czar, who is Tom Homan.
I thought you were going to ask me how to do it. I got so scared. That's right. Here he is on CBS's 60 Minutes in November with correspondent Cecilia Vega.
On the heels of a historic illegal immigration crisis, that has to be done.
What would the largest deportation in American history look like to you?
Well, let me tell you what's not going to be first. It's not going to be a mass sweep of neighborhoods. It's not going to be building concentration camps. I've read it all. It's ridiculous.
But if mass deportation is not going to be, as you said, massive sweeps and concentration camps,
There'll be concentrated.
what is it?
There'll be targeted arrest.
Targeted arrests. A reminder, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's also available as a video on YouTube. Tolliver, what are we listening to?
This is Outer National with Todos Somos Ilegales, which translates to We Are All Illegal. Thanks to my year of Duolingo, I didn't have to look that up. I knew what it meant.
You can translate it yourself.
More of your calls coming up on The Middle. This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson coming to you from WNIN in Evansville, Indiana this week. And we're talking about Trump's deportation program, which is now underway. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com. I am joined by Indiana Democratic State Representative Alex Burton and the state's Republican Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. And let's go right back to the phones. And Nicole, who is in St. Louis, Missouri. Nicole, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I just wanted to say that I am actually married to a foreigner, and we have been trying to get his green card for 2.5 years, and we've been separated for most of that time because he can't get into the country. And I have absolutely no resentment for anybody who came here any way they could, because the process is so long and expensive, and people who are in horrible circumstances don't have 10 years to wait for a non-marriage green card. And then on the point of them trying to come here legally, we have so many people at the border who were trying to come through legally with the apps that for making parole appointments.
Right.
That were shut down.
They were just shut down the other day.
You can't sit there. Yeah, so you can't say come in legally and then shut down their only route to do that.
Right.
I think
Go ahead, Nicole.
I think the mass deportation plan is a terrible idea. I think it's cruel, and I think it will damage our economy irreparably.
Okay.
And I don't
Nicole,
think that administration.
We've got it. Thank you so much. And Lieutenant Governor, you can hear the desperation there in Nicole's voice. And you just think about people, whether they're coming for love or they're coming to get away from terrible circumstances, they're going to do what they need to do for their own lives. And a lot of people clearly are going to take huge risks to their own safety in order to get to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's again heartbreaking, right? It's not that there's not compassion for her and her, I guess, boyfriend or husband. But the question that I go back to is, all right, fine. If we don't want to uphold our law, then that's fine. We can pick and choose laws, but just be consistent. Like if she gets to pick and choose the laws, she says she has no disdain for anyone who tries to get here however they can. It's like, okay, fine. Well, then you can't tell someone else when they break the law that, and it might be a different law, but that's okay then. So we're either a nation of laws or we're not, and I think we have to reform. Like I think we should reform how our immigration process is, and it's a really long line. I get it, but we can't even begin to do that because the it's so broken on the back end, you're not going to be able to reform the front end. So I appreciate President Trump. I appreciate that there's finally action being taken. And I think
are you upset that he stopped that bill, from passing, that quite conservative bill from passing last year? And are you upset that he shut down the CPB-1 app that was sort of allowed a pathway for people to have their appointments?
No, because CPB-1 app was being abused like big time. It wasn't really doing much. There are multiple reports that it just essentially let people in here and they weren't coming back for their court dates. Their court dates were years down the road. It was just getting them into the country. So there's that. And the Lankford bill last year, multiple reports of Border Patrol agents and unions were saying it's not going to do anything. And that's why President Trump fought against it. It wasn't a good bill that was actually going to accomplish the mission of securing the border. And it was just a political stunt that was trying to be done by the Biden administration to say, no, we're trying to do something. And
it was one of the most conservative members of the Senate that was sort of the man behind it.
It was James Lankford, and he's not one of the most conservative guys.
You don't
in the
think
Senate.
so?
but all that to say, even Tom Holman came out and said this bill isn't going to do anything. So again, now we're seeing action. I think the last 4 days of the Trump administration, we're seeing people arrested that have broken the law, that are violent criminals. And I think, let's try it. Like I said earlier, it hasn't been working for the last 20 years. I'm ready to try something else.
See what happens here. Yeah. Let's go to Austin, who is in Houston, Texas. Austin, welcome to The Middle. Your thoughts about the deportation?
Yeah, and I'm just going to echo what some other callers have said, but I see one side sort of failing to recognize the impact to citizens and services and crime that the influx of, illegal immigrants has had, and then I see the other side having sort of a knee-jerk reaction. Either you broke the law or you didn't. And what I would like to see is, acknowledgement that we all want those who have a desire to be here legally and are good for our country to be here. And I feel that if you have a knee-jerk reaction of a mass deportation before you address the root cause, which is an easier and more efficient way to citizenship, then it's going to cause some problems. We've got I'm pretty in line with President Trump on most things, but I've got a landscaper and a housekeeper that are both illegal, and I've been trying to get citizenship for a long time, and I don't want them to be wrapped up in that. Before we have a knee-jerk reaction, we need to understand what the problem is. I think it is sort of an excuse that we can't fix the front end before we fix the back end. We can get that started. We can give a grace period for if you need to begin your citizenship quest, and then after that, if you're still not willing to do things the right way and break the law, then we're going to kick you out. But we are.
But you think it's knee jerk what's happening right now, Austin? Thank you for that, Representative Burton. Your response?
Yeah, thank you so much, Austin, for your comments. And I am very much of the ground. I know it probably sounds a little odd, but I am in the business of solving problems, not just having these talking points. And what you just mentioned is incredibly factual. Whether Senator Lankford's bill was golden or not, it was at least a starting point that would have had the conversation. And sure, there would have been some arguing back and forth and debating back and forth about how to best implement, but something is better than nothing. Right now, there's a whole lot of talking and a whole lot of big ideas, but the path to implementation is going to be very it's going to be straining on those who are actually going to have to carry out, whether it's raids or arrest, deportations, all of that. We have to have some sense about it and creating some sort of a pathway, right? Those at the border should have had the opportunity to find their citizenship. Those who have been in refugee camps for more than 18 years should have continued their pathway onto landing in the United States, right? They're the most vetted persons that could ever be.
Well, and by the way, Lieutenant Governor, some of those people that were supposed to come on refugee planes were people that helped the United States in Afghanistan, whose lives are at risk. Like, do you have a problem with that? I mean, these are people that we sort of made a promise to as a country and then, pulled the ticket at the last minute.
No, I mean, I think we should have gone out of our way to help them get citizenship. And I think there's, in cases like that where you've really served the United States overseas, and you need refugee status, that's different. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who knowingly come across our border illegally, they're breaking our laws. Like, there's ways to help those who have helped us, and there's ways to help those that want to be helped. But again, when you break the law, we don't know you're here and we can't help you. And I guess, I would maybe put it back on Representative Burton a little bit, is if you're okay with this, I mean, then do you open up your house and just say anybody's welcome to come at any point? And we kind of make this a big picture where it's like, well, they can just come in. It's not going to matter. And it's like, well, okay, do you live that way in your own home? No, we lock our doors. We make sure we know who's in our house. We don't want some stranger just walking in. And so I hear this inconsistent kind of rhetoric. On one side, it's like, we got to be open and loving to all people. But then, well, when it comes to my city or my house or my stuff, don't touch that. So it's just not consistent. If we're going to be consistent, let's be consistent across, all levels.
What's your response to that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We have to be consistent, and there is no consistency. On one hand, refugees are welcome; others are not. Well, if refugees are welcome here, who have helped us, then let's sign a joint letter to all the refugee agencies in support of refugees still coming to the United States. We can't just. We have to do something, and yes, I understand taking care of what's here in the United States. That is absolutely important. We have to take care of our own household, right? And
well, what about his point about, would you open up your own doors and sort of leave them open and say, come on in and stay with me?
Yeah, no, there's a process. I'm not going to invite strangers in to stay with my family, but at the same time, those coming in through the process have been vetted. These are not people who are randomly selected to come in. If you're
talking about refugees.
Yeah, if you're in a refugee camp,
gotcha.
you are vetted to the degree. For those who have found their way here undocumented, yes, there still needs to be a process. Even if you found your way to Indiana when you pass them through several states before you get here, if they found their way to Indiana, there is a reason why they came here.
Right. Let me get to another call. Robert is in Atlanta, Georgia. Robert, welcome to The Middle. Your thoughts on the deportation program?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Jeremy. Thanks so much for the program. I was doing it regularly. First thing I want to preempt my comments by letting you know that I am a conservative Democrat. And unluckily, Vice President Harris did not win because, Biden dragged this one way too long. So let's just talk about one aspect of it that's real important. While I was waiting, I looked at the US DOJ website with regard to Hispanics that are in jail, and I'm not just picking on Hispanics because there's a whole lot of people from a whole lot of countries that are in our jail system. In our jail system, if you have one prisoner in jail, it costs the U.S. taxpayer roughly $50,000 per person per year. US DOJ website says, and I just held a picture on it. Let me read it to you. It says today DOJ, let me see. Data shows that 94% of confirmed aliens incarcerated in federal Bureau prisons and United States Marshal Service facilities are unlawfully present in the United States. Okay,
so we've got. So you're saying we've got a lot of undocumented immigrants in our prisons. That's costing money. That's your point?
Well, not only that, but that is this is easy pickings for Trump. So if 95%, we'll say, are illegally there, they're already in the prison system, they're already costing us $50,000 a year. That's a big money.
Why not just deport those people first? You're saying?
Okay, that's the first point. Here's the problem.
Well, let me take that because we've got limited time. Let me take that to the Lieutenant Governor. There's a big question about the detention of these people. Private prisons are chomping at the bit to be able to get the contracts and be able to detain some of the people. But what about just the cost of detaining people who are here in this country illegally?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real problem. Every illegal immigrant that comes across is going to put a drain on our system. And that's the point, whether it's in our jails, whether it's in our schools, whether it's in our hospitals. And we just don't have the unlimited funds or the bandwidth to take care of the whole world. I wish we did. I mean, listen, I would love to help every single person in the world. I hate to see suffering anywhere, but we don't. And if we don't take care of our own house first, our own nation first, we will not be able to be a good neighbor. This is just practical life skills. I mean, you got to make sure you're taking care. I mean, that's why when the mask drops down on the airplane, they always say, put your mask on first so that you can help other people. And what we're doing is we're rejecting our mask and say, well, we can help everyone else, and it's killing us. And that's the concern that I have. So I agree. It is draining our system.
Kelsey is in San Antonio, Texas. Kelsey, welcome to The Middle. Your thoughts on the deportation program?
First of all, I want to thank Representative Burton for recognizing that this is a lot of dehumanization of people. And I want to ask a question as a clergy member and as a public school teacher. What's going to happen to the kids? We're talking about deporting parents and ripping apart families, and ending birthright citizenship, and we will have kids without families to go home to, no idea that their parents are gone. And they're going home to an empty house. They're going home to trauma. They have no idea what is going on. We're talking about raids in churches and raids in schools. I can't do my job if I know that my students can't learn. I can't preach if they are constantly, my people are constantly worried about their safety and their families. If you're a person of faith, I mean, Jesus talked about caring for the orphan and the widow and the stranger and the foreigner. And if that's what we're supposed to do, yes, we need to take care of our house first. But if we're using this as an excuse to not take care of our house, because we have all of these programs that we're talking about, oh, well, we need to take care of veterans, but we're not doing that. We're making illegal immigration a huge issue and not taking care of other things. But really, I'm worried about the kids because that's who I work with most.
Yeah. Kelsey, thank you very much. I'll go to you, Representative Burton. It's a good point. I mean, I'm thinking about, I asked the Lieutenant Governor earlier about, the idea of going into schools and churches, but what about that? What kind of a trauma does it leave on people, on the kids in the school, if their friend gets deported, or their friend's parents or their parents get deported?
Yeah, that's incredibly problematic here in Indiana when more than 40% of the immigrant population are children. I have to give a shout out to Bowling Green, Kentucky, because they have done a phenomenal job of working with the school system and creating a program for those who are new to America. And it's helping them. If they've came to the United States at age 16, they're able to take courses, and it was passed through the Kentucky legislature where they're able to get services up until they're 21. Indiana doesn't have anything along those lines. And so there's an opportunity, and we're missing it because we were letting this rhetoric control no substance. And if there's going to be some substance, we can address housing, we can address our educational system, and we can address our healthcare issues. We're not doing any of the above. We're just saying we have a problem, and I'm going to stand on my box, and I'm going to continue talking about immigration, and I'm not going to have anything substantive to bring to the table to actually solve the problem.
I'm going to give you the last word. We've run out of time, but I'm going to give you the last word, Lieutenant Governor. And I just want to ask you about something that hasn't come up so much this hour, but it is a question on a lot of people's minds. It's sort of a bigger picture question about this, which is, how do we deal with the idea of that the U.S., the image of America around the world, gets seen as racist, xenophobic for carrying out this deportation program, even if some of it is sort of like just to be in front of the cameras to make a point? What about that? Are you worried about that at all?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, listen, we got to do what's right. If we can stand before God and say we did what's right, then that's what I'm concerned with. And to your caller that invoked, her clergy background, I also am part of the clergy. I'm a pastor. That's what I do. And, Romans 13 says that the government does not bear the sword in vain. And so when you're breaking laws, God does not give you the right to break a law unless it violates his law. And immigration law does not violate God's law. God has set up sovereign borders. He told nations, you have sovereign borders to protect. So I think I'm not worried about the image. I think if we do what's right, I think that will actually supersede and win the end of the day. And listen, people throw around words like racist and xenophobic all the time. Those words don't really carry much weight in my book anymore because they get used. I mean, I get called that when I eat at Chick-fil-A. I mean, people say, you're something for supporting Chick-fil-A. So we just got to do what's right, and that's my concern.
We have to leave it there. I will say Tolliver's dad was also a pastor. Mine's
know.
not. So there's a lot of
and half
clergy in
again.
this room. I want to thank my guests so much: Indiana Democratic State Representative Alex Burton and Republican Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. Really appreciate both of you coming on the show this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And next week, we're going to be diving into foreign policy as we take your questions about the Middle East with our guest, Barham Saleh, the former president of Iraq. Tolliver, that's our first world leader.
Well, you don't think I'm a world leader, Jeremy? Ouch, man. As always, you can call in at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out to listentothemiddle.com. You can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter. And don't forget to check out our brand new video podcast on YouTube, where you can watch us as well as hear us.
Thanks this week to Kenton McDonald, Tim Black, Jason Yeager, and Todd Donaldson here at WNIN. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you next week.